Somebody very special is in the back waiting to come out here and talk to you all. Do you know who it is? Let's get on your feet. Help me give a massive, massive Lifewave welcome to our owner, our inventor, our CEO, David Schmidt.
Sit down and relax. It is Saturday. How are you all doing? Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you coming out on a Saturday. I really appreciate that you're taking the time, the energy, the effort to be here on a Saturday. How many of you are from outside of Orlando or Florida? Probably I should ask you. Wow, okay, welcome to our state. It's great to have you here. You could be at Disneyland or SeaWorld or one of those things, but thank you for investing in your future and being here today. I once had, please, you're welcome, for that one person over there. I once had the privilege of working with Lieutenant General Teddy Allen. He and I worked on a project together back in 2005, 6, 7, and we were introducing Lifewave technology to the US military for pain relief. And that eventually ended up in Lifewave making donations to the military, the Purple Heart, so we could provide natural, drug-free pain relief to our veterans who work to protect our country every day. And sometimes we don't recognize their efforts enough. And myself and David Jumper once had the opportunity to see General Allen speak at a Lifewave event at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. And he started off the event by saying, first, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you. Then I'm gonna tell you, and then I'm gonna tell you what I told you. And that was his formula for making a presentation. So I'm going to start off that way too. And what we're going to do today together, because it's Saturday, we're going to have some fun with this, and we're going to take an exploration behind the origins of life, why that's important for us to understand it, and how this can lead to us having a system for stopping and reversing human aging. So let's say that's the goal. Now there's a number of really good reasons as to why we want to stop aging. One of those is that if we make every cell in the body young and healthy, it becomes resistant or immune to disease. So the immediate benefit that we get if we put cells into a younger, healthier state is that we decrease the likelihood of getting a disease. Accidents are another thing entirely. We improve the quality of life. We extend our life. We extend our productive life. And we also have an enormous benefit for society. We decrease healthcare costs. Can you imagine what it would be like in any country if we could come up with an effective treatment for all the top killers, heart disease, cancer, diabetes? If we could do away with those, we would have all of these tens of billions of dollars and more available for other things, like, I don't know, maybe feeding the hungry, taking care of those that are less fortunate. We could do away with those things and improve quality of life. So there's some really good reasons as to why we want to understand the fabric of life. And fortunately, God and nature have provided a number of very good examples for us to follow in terms of species that have managed to defy what we consider to be the aging process. How many of you are using some type of artificial intelligence application like ChatGPT, Grok, okay? Any of you have tried Grok 4? Not Grok 3, because apparently Grok 3 likes Adolf Hitler, but Grok 4, which now is supposed to be, give you a response and have the equivalent intelligence of every PhD on the planet. Okay, so a few of you have tried Grok 4. I decided to put Grok 4 to the test, and when it came out, I thought I would ask it some interesting questions in the fields of metallurgy, electrochemistry, chemistry, biology, and mechanical engineering. And I was incredibly impressed with the sophistication and the detail of the answer, along with a number of surprises. Now, Calvin Smith, who is executive director at Answers in Genesis, posed a question to Grok 4, and this was just recently. And he asked Grok 4, what is the scientific understanding for how life came to be? And Grok 4 replied that the scientific consensus was that life formed through abiogenesis. Now, before some of you criticize my pronunciation of abiogenesis, please give me a little bit of leeway, because I'm from New Jersey originally, and I tend to mispronounce everything. But hopefully you'll get what I'm saying. So abiogenesis is this scientific concept. Well, we could say it's a concept. It's a concept that something can come from nothing. So you take various chemicals, you react them with one another, and life emerges. That's the concept of abiogenesis. Never mind how did those chemicals get to be there in the first place, and how did matter get to be in our universe in the first place. Put that all off to the side. That's what abiogenesis is. And this concept never really sat well with me, because today I'm in the drone industry. I'm in the drone industry for 4 years, because one of the things that we want to do with Lifewave is to make it a multi-generational company. So, thank you. So, part of what we're doing is to create new technology in industries well beyond health and wellness, so that when you someday wish to retire and do other things, you'll be able to pass your business that you worked hard to build off to your kids or whoever you want, and Lifewave will be around, because we're thinking proactively today about what technology and what businesses are relevant 10, 20, 30 years from now. So that's part of our plan. And this started just as a concept 4 years ago, but we're at the point today where we're taking 20 of our top leaders from around the world, and they're going to get to see about less than 4 weeks from now our drone production facility in Denmark. It's the, thank you. It's, Dr. Stacy and Brent will be there. Could you give Dr. Stacy and Brent a nice round of applause for that? A couple of applause together, and all of their teammates as well. So, by the way, the drone initiative that we have, it's the largest single drone initiative ever in the history of Denmark. It's the largest production facility there, and we'll be able to build as many as 500 aircraft per year out of this facility, which is not a small feat. These aircraft have a 15-foot wingspan. They have very advanced technology on it, such as synthetic aperture radar, night vision, regular cameras, and this is so that we can do operations like search and rescue, delivery of medical goods, and the technology that I invented that we built into this drone allows it to have the highest flight time of any drone of this size or even larger. we can stay in the air well over 30 hours. And for a 15-foot aircraft, that's remarkable. Typically, it would be 8, 12, 16 hours. And we do this, by the way, it's an internal combustion engine of a very unusual design, and it would be considered to be a green technology. So we can put petroleum fuels in this, yet it has 1/5 of the carbon emissions of a regular gasoline engine. So we'll be, as we're setting up our drone facility, we'll be setting up the manufacturing on these engines, and in the future, about 5 years from now, you'll be able to connect to your home a power generation system. This is all done through network marketing, where you're going to be able to provide and generate 20 kilowatts of energy to completely power your home, do it in a clean way that's great for the environment, be independent, off the grid, and also have about 5 kilowatts of power left to sell back to the grid. Okay, so I sidetracked a little bit, let's come back. So on the drones, there are perhaps at least hundreds of different parts that go into this. And we have to have experts in composites. So building the drones out of carbon fiber, I invented a new nanotechnology foam that's very, very light and yet stronger than steel. And we need special technology to make that. We have to have machinists where we're in our shop, we're making these engines right from the ground up, from the raw materials. We need experts in electronics, aircraft design. We do something called computational fluid dynamics, which is, let's make sure that this plane can fly and it can do it efficiently and do it well. So we need all of these experts in all these different fields to design this aircraft. And it absolutely is trivial and pales to insignificance compared to the grandeur and the glory of God and this world that has been created by God. So we go back to Grok 4. And Grok 4, the standard response is that life came from nothing, abiogenesis. But then Calvin Smith proceeded to ask a few additional questions, such as, what is the probability, using logic, observational science, and statistics, what is the probability that life emerged from nothing? And Grok 4 came back and said the odds that life came from nothing is 1 times 10 to the 200th power. So for those of you that don't understand statistics, I'll use an analogy. The odds of, by the way, creating a genetic sequence with 1,000 nucleotides is 1 times 10 to the 600th power of probability. So then he asked Grok 4, if the Earth is truly 6.5 billion years old, was there enough time for life to emerge from nothing? And the answer is no. There's simply not enough time for this to happen. So the analogy would be, if you were looking for a specific grain of sand in all the sand on the Earth, and you had to find that on your first shot blindfolded, that is the analogy to the likelihood that life formed by accident. So why am I bringing this up? The reason I'm bringing this up is because there's an argument here to be made, a very, very good argument, that intelligent design was involved in the creation of all life. And as a matter of fact, Calvin Smith got Grok 4 to admit that, which was interesting. So apparently these AIs can learn. So if AIs recognize that there is a God and Lord and Creator, maybe there is some hope for us after all. Okay. So why am I bringing this all up? It's because we have to have intelligent design behind everything. The automobile that you use to get here today, airplanes that we travel in, computers that we use, cell phones, it all had an intelligence behind it in order to create it. And nature has to follow these same rules, meaning that the enormous complexity of life dictates that there is a biological code, there is a plan behind everything. And if we can understand that plan and that code, then we can achieve things that we haven't before in all types of disciplines. But let's keep this conversation focused on the moment, just on human biology, and let's see if we can understand some of these codes. And the reason this is important is that if we understand the code, then we can create technology based on the code. Let's go back in time a little bit to the early 2000s. It's 2001, and I have produced the first Lifewave patch. I go ahead and set up a company in 2002. It took me several years, by the way, to figure that out, about how to create a Lifewave patch. And then in 2004, we launched the network marketing company based around Lifewave Energy Enhancer. And the proposition with Energy Enhancer was very, very simple. Let's go ahead and have a product where we can turn on fat burning, fatty acid metabolism, beta oxidation. Let's turn on fat burning and do it in a way where we're working with the natural code of the human body. We're going to stimulate the skin with very low levels of light, turn on fat burning, and increase natural energy. That's the goal. So we have over 80 clinical studies today. We've done blood testing, urine testing, a whole variety of different bioelectrical testing to prove and substantiate that the mechanism of action of our products is true, and here are the health benefits, and it's safe. So that's the first product. Now, if we were to, one of the questions that I often get asked are, what are some of the wavelengths of light that are coming off of the patch to do this? So one of the wavelengths of light is 630 nanometers. So why use that wavelength of light? It's because 630 nanometers turns on the mitochondria. And this is well documented now. There's actually a few different wavelengths of light, 850 nanometer, 630, 660, a variety of wavelengths in the infrared that will turn on energy production in the cell. So this is very useful because if we want a way to improve our metabolism, improve our energy, facilitate detoxification, improve our overall health, we can do it with light. Whether or not it's with a Lifewave patch or with an active device like an infrared lamp or a cold laser or so forth. The question though is, why does that work in the first place? Why would light, and any specific wavelength of light, produce any type of result? There has to be some type of mechanism there. And what that would mean is that our bodies were designed to utilize light. Now, it would be scientifically absurd to disagree with this because our eyes process light. So we could just start there. It's very well known that our eyes are going to take in light. This stimulates the optic nerve, goes back to the visual cortex, and we can see, and then our brains are capable of processing that information and acting accordingly. So this is obviously very well known. So we can at least agree that our bodies, through the eyes, are designed to process light. Now we can go a step further, and we can go back decades now, 50 years, through the work of Fritz Popp. And we can take cells and put them, it doesn't matter if it's human cells, plants, animals, we can take cells and we can put them in a room that's completely dark. And then we use a device called a photomultiplier tube. And off of those living cells are highly coherent pulses of light. And these pulses of light come from the DNA. Experiments that we did in our lab actually show that this light emerges from the vacuum. The light comes from the hydrogen bonds that hold DNA together. Something comes from nothing. Third-party research. I once met and worked with a physicist from Georgia Tech in the 90s, and he told me about an experiment that Georgia Tech did, which is fascinating. They took a vacuum chamber, and they used a device called a mass spectrometer, and they observed atoms of hydrogen spontaneously appearing in the vacuum. Something was coming from nothing. So how were our bodies designed and created? Why does light have an interaction? Well, in the case of 630 nanometer light, if we're interested in elevating fat burning and increasing energy naturally, you stimulate the skin with light. This will interact with something called a chromophore in the human body, meaning there is a biochemical that is capable of absorbing or processing light, and in this case, it's called cytochrome C oxidase, which is a copper-containing nutrient. The cytochrome C oxidase is part of something we call the electron transport chain, which is a bucket brigade of electrons found in the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. So in other words, you're transferring the energy or creating a signal, thank you, creating a signal to increase energy production in the cell through this very complex mechanism. So we stimulate the skin with light, it elevates production of cytochrome C oxidase, this transfers electrons over to the Krebs cycle, and these additional electrons are used to make additional ATP, and that energy comes from the metabolism of fatty acids. So this is how light is converted over into chemical energy. As was correctly observed by Robert Becker, the energetic systems in the body control the biochemistry. And this is information that the pharmaceutical companies absolutely hate. Because it means it gives us a principle to look at life in a very specific way. Now, by the way, there have been, I think, a number of medical advancements that are absolutely extraordinary. People can get heart surgery, eye surgery today. They can take antibiotics to prevent disease. So I certainly don't mean to say that nothing good has come out of modern medicine. That's not the case at all. But when we're looking at treatment of disease, or perhaps more importantly, prevention of disease, it means that we don't have to rely on pharmaceutical drugs. We don't have to rely on synthetics. We can look to nature, and we can look beyond the biochemistry, although the biochemistry is valuable, and we can use technology to maintain and support our health in some very valuable ways and decrease our risks. Now, it is important to say that if we understand that the bioelectrical, biomagnetic systems in the body are controlling the biochemistry, we need the biochemistry there. So that means we have to have a healthy diet that's full of nutrition. We need to supplement where necessary. We should be exercising regularly and getting proper rest, drinking enough water, and managing our stress, among other things. How many of you love to exercise? Okay, I'm not seeing, this section's terrible. Okay, you guys are doing pretty good over here. This section, we're gonna need some work. Okay, well, I'm going to do a little bit of a plug now for our conference coming up in October, but we have 2 clinical studies that are going on right now. And for those of you that don't like to exercise, maybe didn't exercise in a while, our first clinical study is on how to perform 50 seconds of resistance training per week and still have enough signal to gain muscle and reduce body fat. So if you haven't exercised in a while, this is a way to get started, and then after that, you see what you do. We also have another study for those of you, how many of you absolutely love to get on a treadmill and do some sprints? All right, it's me and Janine, all right, that's it. Okay, we have another study that we're doing, which is 80 seconds of cardio per week, which is the equivalent of 90 minutes of jogging. So that's another study that I'm going to be talking about at conference. So please come to conference. By the way, when you come to conference, did you know that you're going to be seeing Elton John on Saturday night? Since it's a Saturday and you're all out here on a beautiful sunny day, I will tell you that Elton is not the only one that's performing that week of conference. We have a lot of other surprises in store. We just haven't, we gotta hold something back, right? So there's be a lot of great reasons to come to conference this year. Okay, so let's go back to that 630 nanometer light for a moment. Where did that number come from? My father is a musician and a music teacher. And his primary instrument is violin, although he's very, very good with piano, and mostly today he still plays piano at 96. And so I grew up with the piano in the house. I've always loved music, and I started to play piano when I was a teenager, and then through my late teens and 20s as I got into college, I had a couple of bands, and it was a lot of fun. And in music, we look, of course, at the number of musical notes, the distance from one note to another, the musical tuning, and in current music, most instruments are tuned to 440 hertz. And 440 hertz is the note of A, the beginning of the musical scale. And I heard some chimes there, so thank you for the support. Now, but how was that 440 hertz derived? Music is an equivalent for mathematics. So let's see if we can come up with a musical scale that is equivalent to 440 hertz, or let's see if we can find what the true number would be. And to do that, we create a grid. So you could do this in an Excel spreadsheet, for example. And what you do is you take the number 2 and you go down on a vertical axis, or up if you prefer. So let's call that the y-axis. And you take the number 2 and you continue to double it. So 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 108, and so forth. Now on the horizontal axis, we'll call that the x-axis, we take the number 3 and then we triple it. So we go 3, 9, 27, so forth. And then in each individual cell, we will multiply the number on the horizontal axis by the number on the vertical axis, and then we can populate that grid. So quite simply, what happens is that in each column now, you get a series of numbers with one number being double of the previous. So for example, in one column you have 108, 264, 432, and so forth. 432, very close to 440. So as it turns out, the correct number to tune a musical instrument to is 432 hertz. Why am I talking to you about music? is because if we take 432 hertz and now we convert that over into a wavelength, so we can take our frequency and we know that the speed of light is constant, and then we're solving for wavelength, so wavelength equals frequency divided by the speed of light, that equals, as a harmonic, 630 nanometers. So your living cells that turn on energy production, best source of energy is fat, at 630 nanometers is equivalent to 432 hertz, and that was derived mathematically. It wasn't an accident. Our living systems are based on a code. Now, let's go back to the objective here. How am I doing on time?
You're great.
Okay.
Plenty of time.
Plenty of...
4 hours.
So I tend to run on a little bit, so my kids tell me that all the time.
Yeah, we love it.
So let's go back now to the objective. So if we are seeing codes show up in our own biology, and that's just simply one example. There are specific photons of light, wavelengths of light, that control all of the biochemical systems in the body. So what that means is that if we're interested in stopping and reversing human aging, maybe one of the things that we can look at are what are some of the peptides in the body, which are very powerful signaling molecules. What are some peptides in the body that decrease with age, and could we restore those to natural levels? So one of the peptides is GHK-Cu. And this was a peptide discovered by Dr. Lauren Picard around 1970 or so, and he put in about 50 years worth of research into looking at how did this simple peptide, it's composed of 3 amino acids, glycine, histidine, and lysine, and it is a copper binding peptide, meaning that the electronic structure of GHK has a very high affinity for binding with copper. Biologically speaking, both GHK and GHK-Cu have biological activity. But the important part here is that this is a simple tripeptide, 3 amino acids, and the power behind copper peptide is in gene expression. So ultimately, if we look at how do our bodies change over time, it's because the library of information in our genes changes over time. Genes that are supposed to be on get turned off, and genes that are supposed to be off get turned on. And this change in gene expression over time is one of the mechanisms that we refer to when we're looking at how human beings and other species age. So one of the ways that we want to look at for helping to slow down or stop or reverse some of the signs of aging is to take a very powerful peptide like GHK, and which can control about 4,000 genes and raise those levels in a way that's safe and healthy. And you could do it through an injection of copper peptide, but why not do it with light if we can understand the code that the human body uses to turn on expression of GHK. Now we can have a method of stimulating the skin with light. This will signal the cell to make copper peptide, and now our copper peptide levels can go back up, provided that we have a healthy diet, we have copper in our diet, and so forth. And that's exactly what we did back in the early days of research on GHK-Cu, X39. We took a sample group of people, took a baseline measurement by blood and urine, and we were looking at copper peptide levels. We then applied the patch, and we went back and looked what their copper peptide levels were like 24 hours after, 7 days after, and we saw that copper peptide levels were going up in as little as 24 hours. We married that to clinically relevant questionnaires along with urine tests, and we found that metabolism of amino acids was increasing with the use of X39. Protein synthesis was going up. So that means people could heal faster when using X39. We saw that people's sleep was improving from using X39. And what's interesting about that is that when you take copper peptide, it elevates GABA. GABA puts us in a relaxed state so people can sleep better, but GABA also has the other benefit that it increases production of something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that is a signaling molecule for stem cells in your brain. So we hired a researcher to look at people's brains, people that were over the age of 60, and in as little as 3 weeks, the coherence of the brain, the efficiency with which information is transferred from one region of the brain to the other was improving in as little as 3 weeks of using X39, and this was all done with light. Before I talk about water, I'm going to have some water. Thank you, Dr. Stacy. Okay. So let's dive into this code a little bit more. Because if we can turn on something as powerful as copper peptide, if you were to get an injection, most people don't want to get injections on a daily or weekly basis. But if you did, it would cost hundreds of dollars to get injections of copper peptide, and that's just simply not really fun. You can't take a pill to elevate copper peptide. It becomes toxic in the gut. So the least expensive way, the most convenient way to do it is with our X39 patch. So we want to understand this biological code a little bit more, because if copper peptide can reset thousands of genes in the body to a more youthful state, then how could we reset 100% of the human genome? How could we stop aging completely? How could we get our cells to start acting like younger, healthier cells? How are we going to figure that out? Well, what we're going to do is go back to nature. And we're going to look and see, are there any examples in nature where these species defy aging? And then can we study these species, learn from them, figure out the control mechanism, and create technology to duplicate that so human beings can take advantage of it? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Few people agree that makes sense. Okay, most of you agree. Okay, good. All right, so what do? Well, we start to identify that, as extraordinary as it seems, there are species on this planet that are functionally immortal, meaning that they don't age. So we could take the humble planaria, which is a very small flatworm, and you probably experimented with these in high school biology. And you take a planaria which has a triangular head, you cut it in half, and you'll see in 17 days that the planaria grows a new tail. The tail, by the way, doesn't die. The tail grows another head. That's a pretty neat trick. 20% of the cells of a planaria are stem cells. Stem cells never age. The planaria is not very complex, but it has complete mastery and control over oxidative and inflammatory stress, so the DNA never becomes corrupted. The cells continue to divide. So as long as the planaria are kept healthy in an enclosed environment, they're given food, water, they don't get sick, the planaria will live in perpetuity. Hydractinia is another species that we've studied, This is also a creature that's found in the sea. They have multiple tentacles, and one of the studies that we did was to cut the tentacles off of the Hydroctinia, put a dye into them so we could monitor the stem cells. And then we used a technology that I invented called the double helix conductor to accelerate the growth rate of those tentacles and completely regenerate them. And the Hydroctinia, like the planaria, is not only capable of being functionally immortal, it also has a complete control over its genome where it can regenerate lost limbs. The tardigrade is also functionally immortal, but the tardigrade does something that no other species does that I'm aware of, and that is you can take a tardigrade into outer space, remove all the water from its body, take it back to Earth, rehydrate it, and it comes back to life. That is a pretty neat trick. What about the glass sea sponge? Anyone want to take a guess at how long the glass sea sponge lives? 10,000 years. You cheated. It's 15,000, but you're close enough. Yeah, you've heard me say this too many times. 15,000 years. There are mollusks that have been found that are over 500 years old. Lobsters, which we study, have been found to be over 130 years old, and what's important about that is that the reasons why lobsters die is because they're either hunted by a predator, such as a human being, they become sick, or they outgrow their shell. So they have a biological speed limit, and that is the size of their shell. Otherwise, when we examine lobsters, what we find is that the tissue in lobsters don't age. As a matter of fact, lobsters get stronger as they age. So for you Marvel movie fans or Marvel fans, lobsters are the Asgardians of Earth, because Asgardians get stronger as they age, like Thor, and so lobsters pull off the same trick. So I love lobsters, and wanted to take a look at how they were doing this. We studied ants, lobsters, planaria, Hydroctinia, and lobsters, I thought, okay, they're relatively complex compared to something like a planaria, so maybe it will be easier to transplant how they're doing this over to human beings. So let's go ahead and look and see if we can find how lobsters are doing it. So then the challenge becomes, I don't want to spend the next 20 years investigating lobsters to try to figure this out. Where would be a place to start? So I went back to the Bible, and I do a regular Bible study just so I can be a better human being. And in the Bible, in the story of Noah, after the flood, God now instructs Noah that human beings can eat pretty much anything. Now we can eat animals. Apparently we were vegetarians before. Now we can eat animals, but don't eat the blood, because that's where the life is. So you ask the question, is it possible there's something in blood that we haven't discovered before? And is there a reason why we shouldn't be consuming animal blood? So let's take a look at that. So that's where I started. I went to a library and see if I could find spectrophotometry data on lobsters. We already know that light controls the biochemistry. Now, if you ask a biochemist, which I did, about why do lobsters never age, what they'll tell you is because lobsters produce an infinite amount of telomerase. So telomerase is an enzyme that regenerates the telomeres on the end of our cells, and the telomere rods control the number of times the cells can divide. So one of the features of lobsters is that biochemically, they produce an infinite amount of telomerase. The telomeres never shorten, so their cells can divide an infinite number of times. But how does that happen exactly if we believe that there is a mechanism of light behind this? So my hypothesis was that we could find this answer in blood. So I was able to get spectrophotometry data on the lobsters. I looked at it, and two of the wavelengths that immediately popped out from cross-sectional analysis of lobster blood was 550 nanometers and 710 nanometers. So actually on the upper end, it was a range between 700 and 710. 550 on the other end. Now, I was expecting to see a third wavelength of light, because if you remember, we had based experiments on regeneration around 432 hertz and 630 nanometers. So I had suspected that 630 nanometers would show up, but it didn't. So I made an educated guess and said, what if 630 nanometer light is somewhere in the lobster, but not in the blood? Let's use that as a hypothesis, and we began to do experiments. We made up light panels with 550, 630, and 700 or 710 nanometer light. We began to treat things with it, and we began to see a biological effect. I then converted those wavelengths of light over into frequencies. So as you recall, 630 is equal to 432. 550 is equal to about 378 hertz, and 710 nanometers is equal to about 486 hertz. So I plugged that into what we call a tone generator, and I created music around lobster blood. And when you do that, it creates something where the sound is rotating. When you play those three notes together, it sounds like the sound is rotating. If you ever saw a movie from like the 1950s with UFOs and they're making this weird sound, it sounds exactly like that. So, okay, there's something going on here. And specifically, there is a slight enharmonic to these frequencies, and as a result, energy is implanted into matter. And we use this information, I can't tell you specifically how we did it, but we use this information to create specific types of metal oxides that never existed before. And we validated that with mass spectrometry. And we've given these as gifts, by the way, to our leaders, these coins that are made from materials that never existed before. And we may do that again in the future, by the way. I don't know. We'll have to see. But what this means is that by using this technique, we can insert energy into biochemical systems. And that's important because if we go back to the Lifewave Energy Enhancer patch, what it is doing is stimulating the skin with light to increase energy. And when we increase energy in the cell, increase fat burning, we get the cells to behave like younger, healthier cells. So, using these wavelengths of light, we started to I created another hypothesis, which was we want to deliver this light inside of the body. Lifewave patches stimulate the skin with light. What if we could get that light to go inside of the body and go everywhere? And water is everywhere in our body. So it would make sense that water would be a delivery system for light. How could we do that? So the early experiments were to take water and disassociate it into hydrogen and oxygen, add energy into the system, use a platinum metal catalyst to convert it back into water, but now we've inserted photons into the hydrogen-oxygen bonds and created these coherent domains where photons of light get trapped. What that means in simple terms is we can take water, process it with light, and now when you drink this water, the light gets released inside of your body. And these results are measurable. We've done 6 clinical studies now on over 250 people. 100% of the people tested experience a change in their blood, urine, and bioelectrical readings. The slowest we ever saw a change occur was 2 minutes, and the average response time is 15 seconds. So what I've just described to you is our X2O system. You take regular water, it could be tap water or filtered water or distilled water or spring water. You put it into X2O, it'll go through 2 separate stages of filtration. Then it will go into processing tanks, get treated with specific wavelengths of light. And then after 45 minutes, you've got a 16-ounce glass of light-infused water that you drink, and that light goes through your body. If you are doing this, drinking this alone in a quiet space, sitting comfortably, you can feel an increase in your circulation. You'll feel a sensation in your forehead and increased mental clarity and awareness. And that will, depending on the individual, that will last for about 3 to 5 hours or so. Okay, one last comment on X2O. I want to go back to the Bible one more time, and because there's one other thing that we can look towards in this search for stopping and reversing human aging. And that would be in the original story of the Garden of Eden. So I would describe myself as a Bible-believing Christian. And what that means is I believe that the Bible is the inspired word of God, each word is sacred, and that the stories that we read in the Bible are true. Whether or not you believe that for this purpose of this discussion is irrelevant. That's up to you, that's your personal business. I'm not going to try to preach to you. But what I find interesting is that if we go to the story of the tree of life, the tree of life is supposed to grant immortality, because God very clearly says we better not let them eat from the tree of life, otherwise they're going to live forever like us. So you go to the tree of life story. It was written in Hebrew, and you convert the Hebrew over to numbers. So Hebrew and Greek are interesting in that each letter equates to a number. So words have numerical values. So if we do this with the story of the tree of life, and we have a, by the way, we have a documentary coming out on this. And for those of you attending the October event, you're going to get a chance, our leaders are going to get a chance to walk down a red carpet, and we're going to give all of you the opportunity to see this documentary. We're very blessed about the team that came together with this. Special shout out to Bimmy Casey and Mickey Willis, who made all of this happen. Thank you, Bimmy. So, story of the tree. So the documentary gets into some of these codes that are in the Bible and how we find these codes in living systems, and the implication that this has on being able to create technology to mimic living systems that don't age and apply that to human beings. So the story of the tree of life is interesting because the tree of life in that numerical sequence is the number 528. And 528 hertz we can convert over to 385 nanometers, and 385 nanometers is a wavelength of light that turns on telomerase production in living cells. So in the book of Genesis, when we're told the tree of life can provide immortality, there is literally an instruction there in a code of how to use energy to turn on telomerase production to lengthen the rods of the telomeres to get cells to divide an infinite number of times, preventing aging. Wow. That information is in the Holy Bible, and there was no way to know that because you would need a spectrophotometer to do that, and that technology has only been available 70 years. So Moses didn't get a lobster, put it into a piece of electronic equipment and say, oh wow, this is really cool. Lobsters have 550 and 385 nanometer light. Let's go ahead and try to figure out how to create a word in Hebrew that has the numerical equivalent of telomerase, right? I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. So this means that we can take enormous comfort in this concept, enormous comfort that the Bible is a source of truth, nature is a source of truth, and we can go back to nature to look for solutions. Now, I want to give you two practical solutions before I'm going to talk about CELLERGIZE here in just a moment, because I promised Dr. Stacy I would do that. I'll give you two practical ways that we can look to nature for solutions. I had the privilege of working with a medical doctor in Rome on a project where we were taking women that had breast cancer. Now, my mom died of breast cancer when I was 25 years old. And so this is something that has been very close to me, and I would like to find ways that we could help women that are in this predicament. So we were working with this doctor in Rome who's an oncologist, and he was looking for natural solutions. So one of the things that we did was we took women that had gone through chemotherapy and radiation, and we gave them energy patches, and we found that they recovered from the chemotherapy much more quickly than if not having the energy patches. So we were talking about doing further studies together, and we were having lunch one day, and he was telling me about a clinical study that he did with olive oil. Now, this is a very special type of olive oil. You can make this yourself if you have the right equipment. You get organic olives with the seed, and you press them in an environment without oxygen. It's called a supercritical process, and it's something very standard in the nutritional industry. And there is a compound in olive seeds that kills cancer cells. And the olive oil carries that compound into the cell to kill the cancer cell. The two of them work together. So olive oil is extraordinary as a natural food because it acts like it's a natural Ozempic. It will help our bodies lose weight. It lowers cholesterol. It's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. But the olive seed has nutrition that, much like apricot kernels, but a different mechanism, that are capable of treating cancer. So in his study that he did, he took people and he gave them this freshly pressed olive oil with the extracts from the seed. 85% of the people that took this that were in stage 4 cancer were able to go into complete remission and be cancer-free. So nature has some of these incredible answers. Now, let's see, we've got a number of men here today, right? Yep. Number of men here? Yeah. At least 5 or 10 that will admit they're men. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to give you some advice tonight. I'm going to give you some dietary advice. When you go out to dinner tonight, order oysters as an appetizer. Oysters contain zinc and selenium. It's going to help to support your testosterone levels. Now, next thing I want you to do is order some red meat, have a nice steak that has protein, saturated fat that's going to support your cholesterol levels and your hormone production. But on top of your steak, get some freshly sliced truffles. And see, one of the miracles of nature is that if we see the activity of truffle pigs, they're hunting for truffles, and it's not because they want to help human beings find this delicacy. It's because the truffles contain human androgens. They contain testosterone, DHEA, androstenedione, and by inhaling the scent of the truffle, it's a process called olfaction, we can elevate our own testosterone levels. So guys, if you want to have a good time tonight, get some truffles, inhale them, you'll have a natural boost of testosterone. We came out with a product, by the way, a couple of years ago that was based on this principle, and unfortunately the FDA changed the way that they were looking at products like this. We had it classified as an essential oil, and we had to take that product off the market. And it was based on this idea that we could have natural compounds like truffles, pine pollen that you inhale. And it will, if you took, let's say, an herb like Tongkat Ali, it will give men a mild increase in testosterone. This was doubling and even tripling men's testosterone levels. So it's extraordinarily effective and completely natural. So this is all to say that when we're looking at solutions to how to maintain and improve our health, we should look to nature first. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not giving you medical advice, but look to nature first. Look to support your health through a solid diet, exercise, proper nutrition, sleep, hydration, and using the master mechanism, which is light, to improve your health. It's a simple, easy to use, inexpensive tool that we all have access to. Now, when we're using light to control the biochemistry, we have to have the biochemistry there. And unfortunately today, our food supply is corrupted. So we came out with CELLERGIZE. And the idea behind this is that, thank you. The idea behind this is that regardless of which patch you're going to use, it could be the glutathione patch, X39, X49, Eon, this contains all of the nutrition that you need to support the activity of our patches. So for example, we have N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine supports our body's levels of glutathione. So if you are a vegan or a vegetarian, you may not be getting enough cysteine in your diet, and now you can get this from CELLERGIZE. Another example is glycine. Glycine, by the way, by itself has been shown to increase the lifespan of mammals by 24%. So glycine as an amino acid is found in not only glutathione but also copper peptide. And we included some additional nutrients like citrulline. Citrulline as an amino acid is a precursor to nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is going to improve blood flow. It acts like a hormone in the body, and it supports the delivery of all these other nutrients. And so most people that take CELLERGIZE are going to feel it start to working immediately and for a number of hours afterwards. And part of that is because of the citrulline. We've also included minerals like zinc and selenium because these help with the conversion of amino acids over into glutathione. Copper, of course, because we have X39 and X49, which are GHK and AHK, copper-binding peptides, so we need a copper there. And most people are deficient in potassium. It's been estimated that maybe as much as 98% of the population has a potassium deficiency. So we put in 500 milligrams of potassium citrate to make sure that you were getting enough potassium. That also, by the way, improves the function of the patches because the patches are dependent on electrolytes in the body as for conduction. So to get a signal to go through the nervous system, we need electrolytes, and that would be things like potassium and magnesium. So we've included that in CELLERGIZE. And I think with that, I might like to invite Dr. Stacy up on stage. So it's not just me talking, and we can have a little bit of a dialogue and answer some questions. Dr. Stacy.
On? Yep, we're on. Wonderful. Wow. What do you guys think of that? You know that little mind-blown emoji? Yeah. Anybody have that go off? A little mind-blown emoji? Thank you, David, for all of that information. Thank you so much. Wow. I was asking them earlier how many people experienced changes from the X39, and of course, everyone ended up standing up at some point in time for the different things. So thank you for inventing this technology for us. Thank you. So I just have 385 questions for you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Or 432.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. All right, so how soon should someone expect results from patching?
We did a study with Dr. Pierre Volkmann at General de Santé Hospital in Lyon, France. And beautiful place, right? Yes. So the study was to look at patching people that were in pain. And in the initial preliminary review of this, I did a presentation in the hospital in front of a group of medical doctors, and they gave me 32 patients, and all 32 got relief of pain after patching. And typically the response is about 2 or 3 minutes. I've patched thousands of people over the last 20 years, and you have people that respond in as little as 10, 15 seconds. So with IceWave, or perhaps X39 and Eon, a really simple protocol is to place X39 behind the neck and then Eon at the point of pain. And don't be surprised if people get immediate pain relief. It's very important to ask the person on a scale of 0 to 10, what is their pain level at, then you patch them, and then progressively they'll come down in pain. The other thing I should say is that when we've done studies with infrared cameras, you can see after about 20 minutes, the inflammation in the body has come down dramatically. Some of this also can be amplified with hydration. So most people are dehydrated, you give them water that supports the effect, and supplements for that have potassium and magnesium can also help reduce a person's pain. But the patches by themselves, they can work as quick as seconds, 2-3 minutes. People have gone 50 to 100% relief of pain.
Wow, is that not incredible? How many of you had results with IceWave in seconds or minutes? Eon? Yes, yeah. And X39, we're the one patch wonder people. Yeah. Right away you felt something. Thank you. So obviously one of my questions was, can the patches be combined for enhanced results? And obviously they can. So now that you have CELLERGIZE, do you feel like that's going to increase people's effectiveness of their patches by giving them that foundation?
Yeah, no question about it, because it always depends on the individual. What type of diet do they have? Age, hydration, are they using any pharmaceutical drugs? Are they smoking? Do they exercise regularly? What's the quality of sleep? All of these things are contributing factors. So it's really important to continually do an evaluation and say, where are some of the areas that I can improve my life? How is my diet really? And am I committed to an exercise program? Am I getting proper rest? Am I sleeping in regular cycles? It's good to do those evaluations and then look at where can we improve. So one of the big problem areas, of course, is going to be on diet. It's very difficult to get a few milligrams of copper into the diet, unless you know, you're consuming liver every day, right? That would be one way to do it. And then even then, liver is not good to have every day because it's too high in iron, and that causes a lot of oxidative stress in the body. So supplementation is pretty much the best way to do it. So this is to say that a product like CELLERGIZE helps to fill in a lot of the gaps that people might have and improve their overall experience. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So everybody wants to know about the time they should wear the patches, the length of time. So would 24 hours make the patch work more effective? Do you just keep it on? What's the timeline look like for that?
So that was a question that I was asking back in the early development of this. And fortunately, today we have thousands of studies, thousands of published studies on light therapy. So there's a tremendous amount of information that we can pull from. And one of the things is attenuation. And that means is if we take an active light source and stimulate the skin, if we continue to stimulate the skin, the body eventually will stop responding. That could be 6 minutes, 20 minutes, what have you. So the body will accommodate or attenuate to the stimulation. So the same is true with the patches. The patches stimulate the skin with very, very low levels of light, and what we found in our studies is that if you have people wear them for 12 hours on and 12 hours off, the body doesn't adapt or accommodate to it. So we recommend people apply the patch, let's say X39, apply it in the morning, remove it at night. If you happen to leave the patch on by accident, which happens, just skip a day and then come back again the following day.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. The other question I get a lot is on specific locations. Someone says, I have this condition or this issue or this injury. Is there a benefit to putting the patch on that location? Let's say it's not pain related, it's something else. Or does the placement matter, or could you talk a little bit about the actual points that are in the instruction booklets, those acupuncture points? Do those make an impact greater than, say, just somewhere randomly on the body?
So that's one of those, it depends. The majority of time, placing, let's say, X39 or Eon or glutathione behind the neck, below the belly button, the majority of time you're going to get a systemic effect. And we know this because we test blood and urine. I don't have that job, thank goodness. I pass that on to other people to do that because I don't really want to handle blood and urine. But nevertheless, these are studies that we do. So what we find is that regardless of placing the patch behind the neck or below the belly button, we see increases in copper peptide or increases in glutathione, regardless of the placement of the patch. So, most of you can simply apply the patch where it shows in the instructions. Now, in a number of cases, what we have found is that applying it to a specific location can have a number of very interesting benefits. Are any of you here with, let's say, your knee, bone on bone, or had a loss of cartilage? And then did any of you go to an orthopedic surgeon and have them tell you that you needed surgery or there's nothing you can do? Okay, that's actually not true. No disrespect to orthopedic surgeons, because biologically speaking, that cartilage got there somehow. And so now it's been known that stem cell injections, you can inject them into the knee and regrow cartilage. But you can use signaling molecules like vitamin C and have the raw material of collagen, and this will help to support growth of new cartilage in the knee. Glutathione is another trigger. So what we found, now if you have bone on bone or you've got loss of cartilage in your joints, why aren't you healing? And the answer to this goes back to very basic stem cell science, which is when you're in a chronic state of inflammation, the inflammatory cytokines provide a signal where the stem cells are attracted to that injury. But if your body is not controlling the inflammation, when the stem cells get to the injury site, they're killed off by those same inflammatory cytokines. So what we found was that if you applied an EON patch to the inside of the knee to help manage the inflammation, and a glutathione patch to the outside of the knee to cause a signal to repair the cartilage, and you took collagen protein, so you had the raw materials, you could regrow cartilage in as little as 30 days. And we've seen this happen over and over again with even people that were bone on bone.
Did you all write that down? Can we just say that one more time? Which patches, David?
We're not making any medical claims, so I think what I would say is, for your health, place the EON patch on the inside of the knee, the glutathione patch on the outside, X39 if you care to on the back of the neck. If you want to take, in addition, a mild amount of vitamin C, let's say 1,000 milligrams a day, and collagen protein, let's say a type 1, type 3 collagen protein, that's going to provide the raw materials, the amino acids that your body needs to make the cartilage.
Wow. Thank you for that. Now, what about X39 using in conjunction? You just mentioned stem cell injections. Can you use X39 if you've had stem cell injections, or in conjunction, will that have any impact at all?
We don't know the answer to that today, but we're speaking with a very prominent stem cell scientist right here in Florida, and we have a study proposal. We're trying to navigate the FDA issue. So basically what we want to do is take people that are veterans, firefighters, who have served this country but don't have the finances. There's an organization here in Florida to facilitate donations to these individuals so they can get stem cell injections without having to pay for them. And so this doctor that we're working with, she's done some really extraordinary things. For example, I spoke with a fireman that was at 9/11 who got asbestos into his lungs. And he was able to inhale mesenchymal stem cells, and he regained complete functionality of his lungs after a few months. So the type of work that we want to do now, the asbestos is still there, by the way, so this has to be an ongoing treatment, but he regained his life. So what we want to do is basically say, okay, can we apply X39 before the stem cell therapy starts, improve the person's health so that when they get an injection of stem cells, they have a better outcome. So hopefully by next October, we'll know the answer to that, and I can present that at conference.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go on the opposite end of that a little bit. There's a lot of conversation out there about cancer stem cells. And so people are concerned, if I'm injecting stem cells or if I'm activating my stem cells, is there a concern of activating cancer stem cells?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So cancer cells, what do? They produce an infinite amount of telomerase. So cancer cells are functionally immortal. When cancer cells divide, their telomeres don't shorten, and they continue to replicate, of course, in an uncontrolled fashion, which is what becomes dangerous. But where did the cancer cell come from in the first place? It was mutated from a stem cell. But if it were the stem cells that were a problem, then 100% of the population would die of cancer very early on in life, when the stem cells are the most viable. So that's not what's happening at all. There is some type of foreign chemical, or it could be radiation, that is affecting the DNA of the stem cell and mutating it into a cancer cell. And this is a accepted concept in biology. I first saw this at Stanford School of Medicine, Stanford University School of Medicine. So this is a definition as to where cancer originates from. So what's important about that is that now if we know that there is a foreign chemical or radiation that's responsible for causing the cancer to start in the first place, then treatment of cancer becomes very obvious, because it means we have to get that toxin out of the body. That has to be foundational. And in Western medicine, we simply add more toxins into the body, and it doesn't make any kind of sense. Yeah.
So there's no way that elevating a peptide, say as that tripeptide that you mentioned earlier, could activate cancer stem cells?
Dr. Lauren Picard's work showed that that would not happen. The other way to look at this, and actually he was using copper peptide injections to treat cancer. But if we look at this logically, what we would say is that when we're in our 20s, 30s, that's the highest that our copper peptide levels get, and then they decline with age. So what happens most of the time, people are young and healthy, and as they get to be 50, 60, 70, that's when the incidence of cancer goes up, and that's when the copper peptide levels are low. So it's actually the opposite. When our copper peptide levels are high, everything in the body works better. We could also use a similar argument for prostate cancer. So it's said in conventional medicine that prostate cancer is associated with testosterone. And I find that to be absurd, because men's levels of testosterone are lower. Oops, I said something I shouldn't have said.
Okay, Ronaldo's gonna find out what that is.
Do we have?
There's been a fire reported in the building. Please proceed to the nearest exit and leave the building.
Is that real? Let's see, where are hotel people here? Okay, so hang on. Mark says he's gonna go check this real quick with the hotel staff.
So, long story short, is I had dinner with Abe Morgenthaler from Harvard University, and he specializes in this area. They turn the siren on just when I'm about to talk about the cure for prostate cancer. I hate that.
Imagine that.
But, no, but the long story is, in his clinical practice as a medical doctor, he doesn't find any association between testosterone and prostate cancer, although all medical doctors are told they can't give their prostate cancer patients testosterone. Yeah.